Muchísimas gracias, Fernando, por tu aportación. Cedo ahora la palabra a Patrick Trannoy, que nos va a hablar de la transición hacia una economía circular en la ciudad de París. Cuando quieras.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here today. I use that? Okay. Thank you for inviting Paris City Council. Circular economy is a culture shift. States of minds, producers and consumers' behaviors, but also the public action are mutating. And Mrs. Anne Hidalgo, our mayor, I know you all know Anne Hidalgo here, and I would like to say gracias Andalucía por darnos a Anne Hidalgo. Anne Hidalgo, our mayor, and our deputy mayor, Mrs. Antoinette Gull, did not only want Paris to be a bystander, but a leading actor of that change in favor of climate, air quality, social link, and not relocatable jobs. Not only Paris administration, but the whole city. And they therefore gave impetus to a participatory approach, which more globally is Mrs. Hidalgo's governance motto, in order to elaborate a global strategy for Greater Paris and provide mutual empowerment to all the stakeholders. 240 people representing 120 entities coming from knowledge institutions, from the public sectors, but also the economic and financial sphere, NGOs, etc., have been taking part in working groups for 1 year. And they made 65 proposals in a white paper and are now monitoring its implementation. I would like us to pragmatically discuss a few levers of local public action, such as public procurement, but also lands mobilization, networking, at different levels of the circular economy virtuous cycle: eco-design, avoiding waste, and subsidiarily only recycling. First level, eco-design. Without sufficient demand, firms may now invest in eco-design production. For example, it is impossible until now to find electric garbage trucks suitable for a dense metropolis. In order to boost manufacturers, the city of Paris organized a public order grouping with other European cities such as Brussels, Madrid, Roma, Copenhagen. And there is no doubt that all these cities together, with the lever of their public procurement, will have a strong impact on eco-design innovation on this market. European public order grouping is part of our new strategy for a responsible public procurement in the context of the Social Economy Act passed in 2014 and the Energy Transition Act passed in 2015 in France. The first priority axis of Paris strategy, procurement strategy, is the ecologic transition and the sustainable city. But the city of Paris also mobilizes urban land and buildings, which are very expensive in our city, and gives a grant to the benefit of eco-design innovation. And we are close to settle an incubator specialized in this field. As a local administration, we can also commission studies resulting in valuable findings for economic stakeholders. And we are about to order one this year on the repair industry. I should not talk about eco-design and repairing without speaking on behalf of stakeholders who ask the European Union, which is represented here, for a real elimination of planned obsolescence through the evolution of eco-design directive, including the introduction of repairability criteria in the extended producer responsibility. Second level, avoiding waste. Circular economy also implies to avoid waste, and especially at source. The city of Paris makes a point of being exemplary in its administrative action, for example, by reducing waste in school canteens. This action takes part in a global plan for sustainable and quality food including the increase of biologic food, the removal of GMOs, of deep water fish, and a 20% reduction of meat products. We also want to boost economic stakeholders and mobilize buildings to set up circular shops like package-free shops. We already have forbidden merchants to use plastic bags in neighborhood markets and have compelled them to give unsold perishable products to local charities. Paris Council also leads a network gathering shops, charities, and matchmaker startups and rewards the best practices so that to reduce food waste. And once again, please also let me tell here what many stakeholders to be from the European Union and other packaging ban measures and the promotion of alternatives like returnable bottles. What could we call good waste? I would say the only good, and that's why Paris City wants to improve the amount of reused material in the building sector. We already reuse material in road works, we reuse cobblestones, we reuse slabs, but we also want circular specification in our works contracts. Private construction activities will also become more circular thanks to the database we want to settle in order to identify available building materials from demolition sites for the benefit of building sites. The City Hall and NGOs network have planned to double the number of ressourceries in Paris from 10 to 20, and by ressourcerie we mean a place where anybody can give away second-hand items where they can be repaired, customized, and sold for a fair price. It is both an environmental and social tool, and some of them are specialized in one field, for example, appliances. We mobilize lands and buildings and give them grants, but we also promote the approach towards the citizens, especially the giving and sharing state of mind. Mrs. Hidalgo wants Paris to be a great sharing city, not only through digital sharing platforms. To this end, we are about to settle sharing kiosks where anybody will be able to give or take whatever they want. These public policies would be strongly reinforced if the Waste Directive contained a target for reusing, separate from the target for recycling 65% of municipal waste by 2030. The sharing does not only concern given and reused items. The sharing also involves a new perspective on property. Why should we own a bike, for example, in Paris now, when Paris offers a bike share service? Not only goods, but also services can be shared and even participatory. That's why we support Repair Café, for example, where one can learn how to repair his belongings from an expert, but also from other participants. But the virtuous sharing economy is not the Uber economy and should not be a deregulation factor. Only as a last resort should we consider recycling as a circular solution. Paris administration developed new utilities such as a door-to-door separate collection service for biodegradable waste. We mobilize lawns, streets, and more precisely former parking spaces to experiment public special bins in order to sort the rubbish. As we do at any level of the virtuous cycle, we also act as a broker to create synergies between all the stakeholders. Some of our smart city strategy work teams are dedicated to these topics. Last but not least, no doubt that increasing the waste collection and sorting in order to recycle materials is of course better than landfilling or even burning them. But this should not mean that our standards and actions should encourage the waste production for the benefit of recycling industry. In this respect, we should be very cautious to the potential conflict of interest within eco-organizations. Before concluding, I would like to focus 1 minute more on our responsible public procurement strategy in terms of methodology. I would like to mention that we, of course, introduce circular specifications in our public contracts, but we also try to shift our global way of thinking and purchasing. For example, our administration is writing a guidebook for all our purchases with circular targets and samples of the offer of products and services made in a circular perspective. Besides, we try to make it a habit to assess the overall cost of what we buy, including the environmental impact, instead of only comparing prices. This may be the main message about public procurement. Concerning the implementation of our Circular Economy Action Plan, I would like to mention that the stakeholders involved in its writing are also taking part in its concrete achievement. They are monitoring the actions through the Smart and Sustainable City Program working teams. Priorities are defined by our elected representatives, of course, but also by citizens themselves, thanks to the participative budget. Thanks for your attention.